Alrighty, we'll get started then. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. So this one will be looking at the smart matching screen. So it is the third best practice session that we've run this year for Simple Fund 360. Over the last couple of months, so we've gone through how to get bank transactions into Simple Fund 360 and also how to import the share transactions into the software as well. So now that we've got our transactions within the fund, we're going to be looking at how to process an SMSF with those transactions in the software. So my name is Damien, so I am the Client Success Manager here at BGL. I'm just going to go through a couple of housekeeping items as well before we jump into things. So the first thing is that this webinar is being recorded. So if you do need to jump out at any time, that's perfectly fine. The webinar is being recorded and all attendees will receive an email with a link to the recording as well. So you will have a copy of that for your availability. The webinars that we have also run over the last couple of months with the bank data and share data are also available on the BGL YouTube channel. We can include the links to those as well, so that you will have access to those ones as well. If you do have any questions, please pop them into the Q&A panel in your Zoom console. I've got Cody and Daniel who will be on standby to answer any questions that you do have in relation to anything that is covered through the session. So as I said, we're looking at the smart matching screen today. So we're just going to look at, just going to briefly touch on where we can import transactions. As I said, we've run a webinar on that in the last couple of months. So we'll just touch on where that is though within the software. But we'll also look at how to bulk match transactions that are similar, create matching rules, and also the client query module within Simple Fund 360. So the client query module has been renamed, previously known as the trustee query. And that allows you to query transactions to clients so that if you're not sure exactly what a transaction is, you can send that off to the client and they can give you further details about what that transaction is to process it with. Perfect, so we'll just jump into the software. Alrighty, so I've got Simple Fund 360 open and I've got my SMSF open on Simple Fund 360 as well. So what I'm going to do is to navigate first to the smart matching screen. So to do that, we go through the accounting menu and then the smart matching option at the top. Awesome. So within here, I've got the transactions that I've previously imported, particularly over the last couple of months in our previous webinars. And the focus of today will be looking at this screen in depth as well. Now, this particular fund has 3 different bank accounts. So if you do have more than 5 particularly bank accounts at a time, they will be displayed there and you will have the option to move across to view the other bank accounts as well. Simply to work on a particular bank account, you can click on them from within here and the transactions relating to that account will appear underneath as well. Now, just a bit of other navigation as well. So what I mentioned before as well. So if you don't have the transactions within for the funds in Simple Fund 360 as well, so you can refer to our previous webinars, but also from within here. So the data entry and import bank statements option. From within here, you can paste a CSV. So if you've got a CSV file from the client with the bank transactions, you can pop them straight into here. Just noting that it is in the debits and credits from the bank perspective. And then once it is imported into Simple Fund 360, it will be flipped. So it makes it easier. Obviously, the bank would give a CSV from their perspective. So we've matched the same way in that methodology. And then it will be converted back into accounting terms with the debits and credits flipped from an accounting perspective. So it's very easy to copy paste a CSV file into this screen here. Just as long as this information is here. And you do also have the option to also import bank accounts with their foreign currency, which also has the daily exchange rates that we receive from with the RBA as well, and any of the foreign currencies there. The other thing as well also to note is that if you don't have a bank feed running or if you don't have a CSV and the client gives you a bank statement, you still don't need to sit there manually entering in transactions line by line. You can use the Smart Docs feature, which is available in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, where you can attach and upload a bank statement and the system will read that PDF or image with the bank transactions and import that into usable data and transactions that you can then process for the SMSF as well. So you can refer to those previous webinars that we will link in there as well. So if you haven't used those features before, they will be available. Now from within here, we've got our bank account, which has 36 unmatched transactions, and then there's another 2 bank accounts with 9 and 1 unmatched transaction as well. So we'll see how many transactions we can get through today in various different ways as well. Now, just a bit more sort of the navigation side of things as well. So the smart matching screen here is linked to the transaction list. So any sort of transactions that are in the transaction list may also appear in this screen as well. So as you start to process and match transactions from within the smart matching screen, that will also flow through to the transaction list as well. If I do jump into the transaction list just temporarily for a moment. So from here, we can see that there are 46 unmatched transactions. So we come through from a bank feed, for example. We can see the ones that are manually matched and then ones that are automatically matched as well. Now, with the ones that are automatically matched, this can come through from a couple of different examples. So the first one is the automated system rules that we have in place. So particularly with dividend data. So dividends, we receive that data from the ASX. So we're using, for example, the information such as the payable date, the number of units on hand, and the price per unit as well. The system can identify using that information and determine the correct account that the investment belongs to as well. So on the screen here, if I just go into the auto match transactions, we can see a bunch of transactions that have been automatically matched. So I haven't done, other than getting the transactions into the software, for example, through a bank feed. So that didn't even involve much involvement from me to get the bank transaction or bank side into the software. We can see that once it was received, the system has automatically matched those transactions with the relevant side as well. So for example, from here, we can see with the 239 account, so for dividends, that the dividend for Adical Technologies has already been automatically matched. And same thing with South 32 as well. And some of the other ones that the fund also holds. Any sort of rules that we have also created will also show if you do want to see where it's come from, you can always click on the arrow from here or any of the transactions that have been matched, and you can see where it has been matched from. So what's caused that to match. If there's any sort of issues with the rule, you can always edit any sort of rules that you have previously created. And we're going to go through and explain how you can create those rules for common transactions that do appear. Particularly, for example, interest paid per month or rent received each month. You can create those rules so that we know that it happens every month, but the system will automatically match them to the relevant accounts as well. From here as well, if you do accidentally match it to the wrong account, you can always use the unmatch button and then select the correct one as well. This really allows you to see those transactions and where they are coming from, and also the ones that aren't currently matched. So these are the 46 that we're going to focus on for the moment. So I'm just going to jump back into our smart matching screen. So at the top of the toolbar there. Okay, so again, looking at our first bank account here. So some of the other options as well that we do have within the screen here. So you can import a CSV from here as well. I usually like to import it from the import bank statements area so that you can see the transactions and add additional transactions within the one go. And also because the debits and credits are flipped, so just so you don't get confused, it allows you to reconcile and make sure that the closing balance correctly matches with the closing balance on 30 June or the period that you were working on from the CSV file. The account view option here is available in actually every screen. So at the moment, I've got account view open, and this really allows you to look at all of the accounts and also drill into the transactions. It's a bit of a shortcut. So it's almost like a live trial balance. So some clients might be familiar with the reports area and then live reports, which is also still there. But this is almost a live trial balance that is available on any screen. So if I was to click into, for example, the bank accounts area, we can see, for example, the current new balance, but you can also drill into that further and you can see all of the transactions that have been posted to that bank account, as well as any supporting PDF documents, you can also change the columns and also export this to an Excel as well. So if you want to see all of the transactions posted to a particular account, you can do that from here. Now, if I exit out of this particular, the account view area, we can see that, and if I navigate to another screen, for example, the fund dashboard, I can still access the account view area. It's a little bit hidden, but the account view is always available next to the fund name at the top of the screen. And you can click that at any screen that you're in within Simple Fund 360. So anytime you're working on a particular fund, you can click on that button. It's really handy, for example, if you are working in the transaction list or even processing, for example, a distribution statement, that when you're entering in a transaction, you can always open up the account view area and see the balance of that particular account and also the prior year as well. So it allows you, it just sits on top of the screen. So if I was to select some details within here, for example, a bank account, and maybe just a clearing account for the moment, and then I open the account view area, I can look at what I need to, for example, that bank account, and close it, and my details are still saved there. But if I was to navigate, for example, to the trial balance or the live report screen, I lose that transaction unless I've saved it. So the account view area is a really good option so that you can see details in any screen that you are working on. So another feature as well with the account view area is that you can also run reports and see funds that have transactions posted to a particular account at a global level as well. So if I want to see all of the funds that have, for example, a property, you can always get that from the investments area and the property dashboard, but I can also drill into that information from within here as well. So I could select, for example, the investments itself, like the property, and see how many funds have the property attached to that particular account as well. So it really allows you to drill into those accounts very easily and see how many funds do have the relevant information that you're looking for as well. This information can also be exported to an Excel again. So it allows you, so you can see it on the screen and the balance changes from there. But you can also export this to an Excel. So if I want to see all of the funds within this license that have a residential property, I can see very quickly that there is 27 funds that have at least one Australian property, and then export this to Excel as well. Now, if there is a new bank account, for example, that hasn't been added to the fund but was established during the financial year, you can always add that from here. So it's just a bit of a quick option to add that bank account in here as well. Now, down the bottom here, so we can see a number of different columns and filters and a bit of information here towards the right-hand side as well. So the first thing to note is that the description area, so you can always search for and filter by particular transactions. So for example, interest paid. And I can filter by those particular transactions. So we can see that it happens once a month at the end of the month, that interest paid to the bank account. And we can see that coming through from here. Now we're going to work on this a little bit more in detail, but we can see here the predicted chart or rule account here. So what that means is Simple Fund 360, based on the fund being previously processed in 360 and also the description here, it will try to guess and determine what account that it relates to. Now, where the confidence level is over here, so we can hover over that, and it will indicate to you how confident it thinks that this is the right account. Now, as you start to process an SMSF, so if you're quite new to Simple Fund 360, coming from a desktop or even a competitor product, the confidence level might be a little bit low, but as you start to process the SMSF, that confidence level will increase, and it will start to learn how you process that fund in picking the relevant account for that as well. So you can always hover over that and see which predicted account it will be matched against. Now, again, here on the right-hand side, so we can see the debits and credit amounts relating to that particular transaction. I've got the ability to match the transactions, and then we can also delete them if we want to, or add it to client query. We're going to leave client query for the moment, and we'll touch on that towards the end of the webinar. Now, again, so if looking at this, we've previously typed in the interest paid. Now, one thing to note is that when you are processing an SMSF and using the smart matching screen, a lot of clients will typically match the transactions that they've filtered and then think that the other transactions have been deleted. They haven't been deleted at all, but if I was to match those ones here and create this rule, which I'll do now, we would always just click on the clear filters to see the remaining transactions afterwards. So from here, again, so we can see that there's interest paid to this particular bank account, and it happens once a month. So there's a couple of different options I can see here. So the first one is that it's going to be going to the interest received account for that particular bank account. So the 2500 account. And if I click on that particular line, we can see that this little panel opens up, which is similar to the transaction list as well. So here on the left-hand side, it shows the account that it is posted against and the sub account over as well. So the interest received account, which is a control account, and then the sub account being this particular bank account as well. So if this was the incorrect account, I could select the correct account as well. And then the system would learn that's the correct account, for example, wherever that same description applies. Now from here as well, so we can enter in the other relevant information, such as the cash distribution and the tax paid if there is any sort of information that needs to be entered in. Now, again, we can see that this happens once a month. So I can match this in bulk and I can use the match button there or select all of these transactions and multiple match it, but it happens once a month. So I don't want to sit there once a month having to go through and enter and match those transactions each month. So what I'm going to do in this example is actually create a rule for this type of transaction. So to do that, I've clicked into the transaction from here, and I'm going to click on the create custom rule from here as well. So another window from here will also open up, and it will give us the option to create this rule and set the conditions for it as well. So what we've got here at the top is anytime that a bank transaction meets these following conditions. So the description of the transaction contains interest paid. So this particular example doesn't have a reference number after this, but you would normally select one of the bank transactions that have this description. Some banks will also put in the reference number of that particular transaction as part of the description. Now that reference number is unique to that one transaction only. So what you would want to do is to make the description specific enough so that it matches the rule that you're trying to create, but not too specific in the sense that it's only going to match it for that one type of transaction only. So for here, we don't have that reference number, so I'm good to leave it as it is. So anytime that there is interest paid, and towards the bottom, as I'm starting to create this rule, we can see the transactions that have matched that particular condition or these rules at the top of the screen here. If you need to add other descriptions or other conditions, you can also do them from here as well. And they can be filtered by the description, amount, or the date as well. So I'm going to leave this one as interest paid for the moment. And then from here, you can select the type of the account that it will be matched against whenever this condition is met. So this is the same one that we looked at before again. So the interest received account and this particular sub account, and we want the full 100% of the account to go there. Now, if you wanted to split that against two different accounts, so for example, property expenses, you can always add the accounts here and allocate the percentage as long as it adds up to 100% as well. Down the bottom here, we've got a couple of different options as well. So you can use the option to apply to all bank accounts. So if it's the same sort of description that happens for multiple bank accounts in the fund, you can apply the rule to all bank accounts at the same time. The review before apply, we'll touch on it a little bit more shortly, but what that means is the system will, the confidence level that we saw earlier in the predicted account, it will show the account that you've selected here, especially if we change that account here, but it won't automatically match to that account until we have reviewed it and ensure that it is correct. So this is more for your transactions where you might, you think it's going to be relevant to this particular account, but there is still the potential for it to be something different as well. So you might choose to have it predict and go to the relevant account, but you still want to review it before that happens as well. Now I'm happy with this rule. So what's going to happen here is it's going to match these 15 transactions to the interest received account for this particular type of transaction. And in the future, when the transaction comes up again in the next month or so, the system is automatically going to determine any interest paid for this bank account will be matched against interest received automatically as well. So it'll match it for these 15 and then ongoing as well. So I'm going to click on the create rule and match transactions button from here. And we can now see that the 15 transactions have been matched, as we can see in the top right-hand corner. So very quickly there, we've almost halved our transactions that we were working on before. There was almost 40 unmatched transactions before. And quite quickly, we've matched all of those in bulk here. So the smart matching screen is a really quick and easy way to match those types of transactions, and also on an ongoing basis as well. So setting up those rules now allows you to speed up the process for the future. Now, again, so I mentioned before, so we can see that there's no transactions here, but that was incorrect because we do know that there's still another 21 that haven't been matched yet. So the reason for that is because of the description over here where I've got interest paid in here. So I'm going to click on the clear filters button from here, and we can now see the other transactions from here as well. And we're going to look at some of the other transactions as well. So we can see, for example, the audit fees have also come up. So in Simple Fund 360 as well, so we've got separate accounts for the auditors, remuneration and accounting fees as well. So we can see the separate accounts from there. So we can see those two transactions there, and the predicted account being the auditors and accountancy fees. So again, Simple Fund 360 has looked at the description of the transaction that has been imported into the software, and it is predicting the relevant account that it should be matched to from here as well. So these ones here, I can see the audit fee is usually only happening once a year. So for that one there, I can create a rule if I like to, but because it's just the one per year, I'm going to leave it and actually just match it for this one manually for the time being. So what I'm going to do is, because that is the correct account and that's the information that is correct, I can simply just click on the match button from here on the right-hand side, and that transaction will now be processed and have the relevant account posted against it for the bank side as well. Same thing with the accounting fees from here as well. So if I was to just click on the match button, it will get posted to that account. Now we can see that it also highlights there was another two types of transactions for the accounting fees again. So I've matched one of them, and the system has highlighted and also shown us that there is still another further 3 more that we might choose to match at the same time. Now from here, so what I can do is again, click on the match button for those particular transactions again. And we've now matched the accounting fees as well. Now I'm going to jump back into the screen again shortly, but just show you how that works with the transaction list exactly. So just looking at the transaction list, as I mentioned before, it is working with the smart matching screen. So we can see, for example, the interest paid rule that we just created before. So we can see that it has this green tick here and has been automatically matched based on the rule that we created before as well. So just by clicking on the arrow, we can see the information here at the bottom as well. Now we can also start to see the manually matched appear here as well. So anytime that you're not creating a rule necessarily, but you are matching from the smart matching screen, it will show up in the manually matched area here. So we can see these are the ones, the audit and accounting fees that we matched in the smart matching screen will appear here as well. Now, any of the rules that you do create can be visible from the matching rules option here at the top of the screen. So if I go into the matching rules area, so I can see all of the rules that are created and established for this particular fund. If you want to see all of the ones that are attached to multiple funds, you can also go into the global view area. And you can see from here all of the different types of rules that have been created across all of the funds as well. Now here as well on the right-hand side, so if you've got a full audit trail, so you can see who has created the rules in case there's been an error or you want to follow up with that person, the type of transaction. And this is based on the users that are internal in your Simple Fund 360 license. You can also move rules up the order. So if you wanted to bring it to the top, then you can also change that order. So that's very important. For example, similar transactions that might be interest paid. And you want it to go to a direct account that you believe is the most defaulted or correct one, you can always move the order so that when Simple Fund 360 tries to automatically match transactions based on the rules that you have created, that it will look at the order that has been set from here as well. If you want to check and make sure that your rules are also working, you can see from here the last match. So for example, the rule that I just created, which was on the 9th of June, so obviously today's date, we can see that this rule has matched in transactions. But I can see that this rule is a little bit sort of older. It's been a couple of weeks since some of the transactions have been posted. Not necessarily a concern, but something to always keep an eye on, just to make sure that your rules are correctly set up. If it has been some time and you believe that is incorrect, so there's something, so transactions aren't being matched, you can always open the rule and just make sure that the conditions are correct. So making sure that the description hasn't changed, for example, and that the other details are also still the same as well. Now, again, from here as well, so what I can also do is we've got our credit interest that's also still paid to the account from here as well. Just refresh the screen for a moment. Yep. Okay, so if I filter by the credit interest that has been paid, and this was what I was referring to before. So if I was to create a rule for this particular type of transaction, so we can see that happens every sort of few months with this one. This is where, when you're creating the rule, that you wouldn't just have that number in there, because it's very specific to that month and that transaction only, but then the numbers would change and sort of increase over time as well. So when creating the rules, just be mindful of removing any sort of reference numbers that are specific to that particular type of transaction, but still making sure that the remaining description is still specific enough as well, so it doesn't get matched to the incorrect type of transactions. Now, just for the purpose of the webinar, I'm not going to create a rule again, so I've just gone through that with our first example. And we can see there's a few transactions that have the credit interest that have been paid here. I can click here, the match button, and go through all 7 of them manually and click that there. But what I'm also going to show you is that you can use the option here at the top of the screen, or the checkbox here, and you can multiple match those transactions. So what this allows you to do is to match it to this account. So it's going to the same account here. We're not creating a rule in this instance, so it is still being manually matched, but I'm doing it in bulk rather than clicking on the match button 7 times. Now in here as well, so if you do want to query these particular transactions, you can download the CSV and work on them. If there's a few remaining transactions that we're not sure of what the answer is, or what the client's done, we can see that from there. And again, we'll go through and explain how the client query module also works shortly as well. But for this example, I'm just going to click on the multiple match from here, and it will now match all of those transactions manually. So again, if I look at the transaction list from here, we can see that the manually matched starts to flow, increase more by the 7 that we've now also matched from there. So again, I'll just click on the clear filters from here, and we can see now our remaining transactions. So obviously we're going through this in the webinar and explaining the various features and options that are available, but we can also see how quickly it is to process an SMSF. So for clients that have come across, particularly from desktop or competing products, or you may not have used the smart matching screen as much as before, it's always good to match and review how you can create those rules and match transactions in bulk rather than doing it through the transaction list on an individual transaction basis. So we focused a bit some of the common transactions that might occur in interest paid, for example. So you can also process buys and sells of investments as well. So from here, what I can see is we've got purchase of BHP and also disposal of CBA shares, and also a purchase of the ANZ shares from here as well. Now again, so looking at the predicted chart and rule from here, we can see that Simple Fund 360 is predicting that it's going to go to BHP, CBA, and ANZ. Now, based on the description of the transaction, we can actually see that is correct. So we can see that there is 156 units of BHP. We can see there's a disposal of 400 units of CBA and 100 units of ANZ being purchased. Now over here, we can see there's a review button. So what that means is that there is more information required before the transaction can be matched. So it's similar. So unlike the match button that's here, that doesn't need any extra information, it has a review button over here. So what I'm going to do is to click on the transaction again. And we can see that the match button has now appeared, but what's actually happening before is it was likely to have not picked up possibly the units before, even though it was in the description, but it's just drawing our attention to the transaction and making sure that we review all of the details in here and that they are all correct. So the number of units, for example, the account that it is going to. So for this one, it's actually going to a duplicated account with bhp.ax1. So I'm going to change that one to just BHP. And we can select that from here. So you can see how easy it is to override any sort of accounts that are being picked up from here as well. Now, if an account doesn't already exist or isn't attached to the fund in the chart of accounts, you can also add them from here as well. So if I was to type in, for example, assume myself is my own sort of security, I can always add an investment from here. And then that would also be created in the chart of accounts. And also I can still process and match the transaction at the same time from here as well. So we've got 156 units that have been purchased. We can see the relevant other details from here and just making sure that the contract and settlement date have been correctly populated. For this example, I'm just going to leave it as it is. It's still important to make sure that it is correct. If you've got the source document evidence, so the contract note, for example, you can attach it from here as well. So that should also flow through to the transaction list and then also flow through to, for example, the work papers module as well. So it's really going to allow you to flow, so have, when you're processing the SMSF, have those transactions and the supporting documents uploaded at the same time. And that will then automatically flow through so that it makes it easier for someone internally to also audit or review the fund before it gets sent for audit as well. So I'm just going to match this transaction from here as well. And then the same thing with the disposal of the CBA shares as well. So if I click on the review button again this time, so we can see here, for example, that there isn't enough units on hand. And Simple Fund 360 looks at obviously all of the parcels that have all of the parcels relating to the purchases in the past, ensuring that it is correct. So for this one example, there is 400, but there's no parcels on hand at all. So for this example, I would normally need to review the fund itself and see maybe I've missed a purchase in the past as well. So I might just leave that one for the time being. Same thing with any sort of contributions as well. So if I go into the contribution from here, so we can see that in this example, we've got a non-concessional contribution. But what's happened is that Simple Fund 360 has picked up that it relates to Mary, but Mary doesn't belong in the fund here. So I could always add Mary to the fund here. She might be a new member to the fund, and then that contribution can be posted to her. But what I'm going to do for the time being is just to pop it to myself. So I've selected myself, and now we can see here and ensure that the contribution has been posted to the correct account. So I'd move that 5,000 because it's not an employer contribution, it is a non-concessional contribution, and pop that down here as well. Now we can see that Simple Fund 360 still shows us those alerts as well. So if it is split across different types of contributions, you can also ensure that it does add up before we do proceed as well. So you can see that's now been entered in, and then I can match that from here as well. Now, this particular fund doesn't have any pension accounts, but if you've got a fund that has a pension account, you can also see some of the additional information that you would normally see in the pension dashboard as well. So the minimum and maximum. So it allows you to see that information and ensure that you are posting it to the correct pension in order to ensure that the correct minimum pension has been met as well. Now, just one more again with the ANZ shares. So from here, again, just looking at the transaction. So again, if the account has not been picked up, or if the fund didn't previously hold that investment or not attached in the chart, you can always attach and create accounts from this option here. So all the details for this one again are correct. So I'm just going to match that one from here as well. Now, a couple of other things as well. So we've looked at mostly how to create rules and also look at the types of transactions that are here. Now, something else that you can also do. So a transaction from the bank perspective may not always be the full just one side only. So what it allows you to do is to also split a transaction from here as well. So just by clicking on the split option here in the top right-hand corner after selecting the transaction, you can split a transaction so that it goes again across the relevant accounts. So let's say, for example, the deposit of South 32, so that it's been picked up as a dividend. But let's just say for argument's sake that this doesn't all relate to the South 32 side of things. What I can do is attach, I split this one into another account and also then post that one as well from here as well. So in the top right-hand corner again, so when you do add any additional transactions, it's important to ensure that it does still reconcile at the top. So if I was to go 239, and I'll just select BHP just for argument's sake again. And then from here, I can select, let's just round up and go with $3.55 and change this one over to $70 as well. So we can see from here that it's really easy. So if you do have one that is required to be split, you don't need to go to the transaction list and split it out manually. You can do it still from within the smart matching screen from here as well. And then from here, I can click on the match button, which will then match the transaction and also split it against those two accounts. So if I show you from the transaction list, once it has been posted, so we can see over here that split. So you can still do it from the transaction list, but you've still got the option to also do it from the smart matching screen over here as well. So that's just a little bit of information about how you can use the smart matching screen more to bulk match transactions, create those rules for common and similar transactions that do pop up quite often. Now, sometimes the description that comes through on the bank statement can be quite vague, or you're not sure exactly what it means. So we actually need to query that with the client. So for those of you that may have used the trustee query module, which is available in the transaction list, it is also in the smart matching screen as well. So let's just say, for example, we want to go in, we're going to query this transaction. So we can see that it looks like a contribution, but we're not sure which member it relates to. So at the moment, there's a couple of members in the fund, but we're not sure which member it relates to. So what we're going to do is to query this transaction with the client directly. So what I can do from here is to click on the arrow and then add client query. So what's happened now is that this has been added to the client query, and I can do this for the remaining transactions that we also have here as well, in case we don't have enough information to proceed with that, with matching the transactions. So what happens is all of the ones that we've now flagged for review will appear in the trustee query or client query module. That's also available within the accounting menu. So what I'm going to do is click on the client query option here at the top of the screen. And we can see those three transactions now posted in here, the ones that we've flagged for review. So we could just touch on briefly about this process here. So what this allows you to do is to obviously query a particular transaction with the client, which can be done in three different ways. Now, there is still a full audit trail history as well, and you can see exactly if you've got multiple transactions that you have queried with the client, which ones are still with yourself, for example, which ones a client may not have responded to, and which ones have now been actioned because we've got enough information from their client as well. So if I just look at the BGL Super one for the moment and query this one with the client. If I click on the send message button actually. So from here, this is where I can query it with the client. So if I was to, so the three options that I mentioned before, so from here, we can send an email to the client. This email will come directly from Simple Fund 360, but you can customize the email template and also who it is being sent to. So for example, if you're processing the fund, you might send it to the accountant, or you might send it to the trustee directly otherwise from here as well. So we can see these two members would be picked up as the recipients, but I can also attach the email because it hasn't been attached to the contact yet. So you can pop in here the firm name as well so that the client knows that it is coming from yourself. And then, as I said, these you can change the wording in this particular template as well so that the client does provide the relevant details. Now, it's always important to make sure that your clients are aware that you are using this option. If you do it through Simple Fund 360, the client does receive a link. It's not a link to access the fund in full in Simple Fund 360, but it is similar to what we can see on the screen here on the right-hand side, where the client can select the transaction, add some comments, and also attach supporting documents, also flow through to the transaction as well. So really allows you to enter in the client to populate the information and give you what you are missing so that you can proceed with processing the SMSF from here. Now, if you don't choose to send the email from Simple Fund 360 because of the sender email or anything like that, that's perfectly fine. You still have the option to send them a text message as well. But it really is about that awareness. So ensuring that your clients are aware that you are using software, and if they receive a message from here, that it is a legitimate one. It's all about the educational piece if you do use this feature, so that the clients don't just ignore your email or your text message that you send to them. So again, similar to the email one, we can send it to the accountant or the recipient, being the trustees or the members of the fund from here. If you want to send it outside of the software, so you've got your own email that your clients trust and they know yourself as the accountant or someone that processes the fund, the manager or the partner, you can generate a link from here as well. So just by clicking on the send link, click on generate link. There isn't any sort of relationships actually attached to this fund. But if I was to attach them from the fund relationships, or you would have already had this been set up, you can generate these links and then send it through your own Outlook or Gmail, for example, to the client. And they can still use the same link to respond in the same way, but at least it's coming from yourself personally. So we've really opened it up and allowed clients the option. So if you want to do it the most convenient way, you can do it through the software, sending a text message, or doing it through your own email provider as well. So that is the trustee query. So then when the client does respond to each of the transactions, they would flow through to the respondent one, for example, and then you would have the relevant information and supporting documents that they may have attached, and allows you to then process the transaction. So when the client does respond as well, it doesn't automatically match it because we still want you to be in control as the accountant of it, and ensure that you've got the information though that you need to then proceed with processing the fund. There is a full audit trail history as well. So any sort of ones that have been previously sent, you can see the history of them as well. So you can see in case something's been moved around, who completed that or when the client responded, you've got that full audit trail history from there as well. So it's just a little bit more about sort of the smart matching screen that we've seen here today. One final thing that we will also show you as well, and it is a little bit hidden, but in the transaction list, there is the AI assistant over here at the top of the screen. Now, if I was to toggle this on, what will happen is Simple Fund 360 will look at all of the transactions that have been posted, and it will see whether the accounts that it has been posted to are correct. So if it detects, for example, that a dividend for whatever reason has been posted as a debit, so rather than the credit, it may get picked up in the screen here as an example. So it's really good to look at this option from here. So it sits within the transaction list area again. This little toggle here with the AI assistant, so the little Albert bot. You can use this here to for Simple Fund 360 to flag any sort of transactions that have been posted and ensure that they are correct. Okay, so I've processed this fund correctly from what the system is telling me. So it's looked at all the transactions that I've matched over the past sort of 45 minutes or so, and there hasn't been any issues that have been picked up at all. But if they were, from here, we'd be able to review them and see them quite easily. So especially for large funds that you're working on, and if you're using this smart matching screen, you may have accidentally matched transactions to the wrong account. If it doesn't look right, it will probably get picked up in this screen here, flagged again for your review as well. And then you've got that workflow at the top here as well. So the ones that have that the correct account that it's predicting to go to, and whether you've chosen to proceed with moving the account across, or if you've just chosen to ignore it, you can see that from here as well. Perfect. So that does bring us to the end of today's webinar. So with some of the other resources that you can also access, so we do still have the live chat function available within your Simple Fund 360 license. It does sit at the top of the screen here with the live chat option. You still got the option to also log a support call if you want to receive email or phone support for a more in-depth query. That's always still available there. but we do have those options available too. If you do want to look at any more resources, you can also access the learning channel as well, which has a number of series and pre-recorded videos, particularly directed to new users of the software, so that you can become familiar with the process as well. Our YouTube channel has a stack of past webinars that BGL has also run. So any sort of ones that you may have missed, you can always access on the YouTube channel. And you've also got the community as well. So the community has a number of Simple Fund 360 users that discuss various feedback parts and things that they want to look at and request in the software. But they can also discuss other various things relating to SMSFs and the best ways of, for example, dealing with clients or even processing an SMSF as well. So again, just on behalf of BGL, a very big thank you for your attendance today. And hopefully you've learned some new things about the smart matching screen, some little hidden gems. It might be the first time that you've seen the screen as well. So hopefully that's given you a bit more confidence, especially with the 2021 funds being lodged, that you probably start to look at processing the 22 financial year. So hopefully today's webinar has helped with being able to begin that process and start to process funds more efficiently. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you in our next webinar hosted in, again, early July as well.